Hello, and welcome to When a Hire Isn't Working Out, brought to you by Ninethorn and presented by Leslie Ann Anderson. Hello, my name is Leslie Ann Anderson, and I am a Texas based HR professional with nearly 30 years of experience. I am the owner and founder of Ninethorn, a corporate advisory firm, and we specialize in HR consulting, career coaching, and talent acquisition solutions. We equip leaders and professionals with the tools to build workplaces and lives rooted in clarity, accountability, and trust. I think every hiring manager has found themselves in this situation, and if you haven't, one day you will. Everyone goes through this. So, you make a hire, they interview well, you check references, and they seem like they're going to be a good fit. They start on their first day, and then all of a sudden, you recognize that this person may not have been the right choice for this position after all. And then you're kind of wondering, oh my, what am I going to do now? Right? Well, this training is a practical guide to recognizing, addressing, and preventing hiring mistakes that could transfer your team and strengthen your organization. So, what is the cost of a bad hire? Because it's an expensive price tag, I must say. What you really need to do is understand how a bad hire truly impacts your organization's success and sustainability. Studies show that 46% of new hires fail within the first 18 months. So, usually within the first 18 months of you bringing someone on, they leave, whether that's voluntarily or involuntarily. All right. Now, this research was brought to us by Leadership IQ. And majority of the time, once you bring someone on, you will realize that they're not meeting the expectations within the first year and a half of employment. And then only 19% of new hires achieve success in their roles and go on to have a long-term relationship with the organization. So those are some pretty bleak numbers, you know. All right, so what typically happens um, if you make a bad hire is um, if you find someone who is not skilled and they're not meeting their numbers, what ends up happening is all of that work kind of bleeds out, and then you will find your high performers kind of stepping in, trying to control the bleeding. You know, they'll begin to pick up the slack, they'll begin to um, have to stay late, do cleanup, and basically what ends up happening is you'll notice that your top key performers will begin to burn out. Not only that, you'll notice a shift in the morale of the company. or the morale of the team. The longer the person stays, you'll notice that your team will begin to get frustrated. You will notice a shift in their attitude, their workload, and then eventually they'll start to leave. And God forbid you bring someone in that has a poor attitude, or they come in with bad habits and, attitude and issues and the way they communicate with each other and things like that. Well, that will go through your team like a bad cold. I mean, toxic behaviors and negativity spread. And before you realize it, there's arguments and conflicts, and people are not working together. And you just don't want that type of toxicity to lead into your organization or your team. So as soon as you notice that, you need to immediately start making changes. All right. But when you think about, you know, um, you bring someone on and you're hoping that they're going to work out and things are going to go well, and then you realize that's not happening, you really need to move quickly in order to either try to fix the situation, whether that is with coaching, whether that's with mentoring, uh, a PIP, whatever the case is. You want to try to rectify the situation, try to resolve it. But in the event that you cannot, you have to get rid of the person. And unfortunately, whenever you have to terminate an employee, it's not just about the money that has been lost with the individual. I mean, it really and truly cost um, a lot to hire someone, and the cost of a bad hire is huge. All right, so SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management, estimates that a bad hire costs approximately 40% of that employee's annual salary when you factor in all of the expenses. So that includes recruitment fees, onboarding, training investments, lost productivity, potential severance packages, which hopefully you won't have to give out, but depending on what the situation is, you may. And for an executive or a specialized technical role, that cost can balloon to multiples of the first year's salary, sometimes reaching 200% or more. And what really happens there is sometimes you'll have a role where it is so crucial to the organization that you cannot afford that role to be vacant. And because of that, you may need to go to a um, recruitment firm and have somebody come in on an interim basis, or get a contractor while you're searching for that next pivotal hire. What we could do is, when you first begin to suspect you have a bad hire uh, within the organization, and start looking for um, signs. Now, when I say this, just because you have a team member who comes on board and they are struggling to find their sea legs, all right? Or, personality clashes are happening. Sometimes it takes a group, a couple of weeks to be able to figure out how to work together, you know? So, unless it is just so drastically horrible, I would always say that at least try to rectify the situation because of the fact that um, it is so expensive trying to replace a hire. However, you will know if a person needs to be replaced immediately. You should be able to identify if this is something that could be corrected or if this is something that you just need to cut your losses on. Excuse me, cut your losses on and then move forward. Okay, so one of the biggest, I don't know why that's popping up there. All right, one of the biggest things that you will realize is that when you bring someone into an organization and you begin to notice right off the bat they are consistently missing deadline. They're not producing the level of work uh, that they need to. It's become a habit. You're constantly, you know, having them to redo their work or check their work, or you're beginning to step in, or you're noticing that other people are stepping in order to help them achieve their work, and it's not a coaching. They're not getting it. Um, if you started hearing from um, peers that you know they're not getting it, they don't know what they're doing. You know, I can't move forward because you know John hasn't done this. John keeps doing this incorrectly. You want to pay attention to that type of feedback. And if you find yourself constantly needing to provide additional support, those are red flags. Because unfortunately, most people are not truthful about their skill set when they're interviewing. Depending on what the situation is, people will fib on their applications, on their resumes. Um, when you go to do a reference check, sometimes they will have a friend provide the reference check versus an actual supervisor or team member that they've worked with in the past. And or either just most of the time people will cover for them, you know. Um, Something else you want to look at is, do they fit in with the culture of the organization? Does their attitude, does their behavior clash with company values? Or is it beginning to create friction or tension with the team? Are you beginning to see those type of issues going on? And then once again, in the event that you realize that your team is beginning to come back and say, this is not working, um, person's not doing the work, the attitude is poor, they're showing up late, whatever the case may be, uh, you definitely want to take a look. If you notice that your team is acting differently around this person, nobody's working with them, they're not working as a team, everybody becomes disengaged during team meetings, during stand ups, when you're working on projects, things like that, you have to pay attention to. Now, the ripple effect from having your bad hire um, continue in the company is, like we said before, you're going to notice a change within the team. So that's probably going to be one of the very first signs that you see is that your team is going to begin to raise red flags and let you know something's not right. So you're going to be looking for verbal cues as well as nonverbal cues. Are they telling you about it, or are you noticing a difference in the way that your team is acting? Next, your clients are going to start talking. They're going to start making complaints. You're going to notice that, your customer service reviews are going down. You're getting more emails about complaints. You're going to notice that there are errors being made where it comes to clients that you haven't had before. And honestly and truthfully, really all the thing you have to do is just watch the numbers, you know. So you should be able to track from the predecessor, if this is a replacement, the predecessor where their numbers were before they left, and if you see it going up, well, you know your person's doing good. But if you see it taking a decline, you know that that person's not working out. Also, depending on what the issue is with the new hire, um, it could trash your reputation. If you hire someone and they are rude and short and dismissive, and people talk, and people will talk about a negative experience before they will talk about a positive one. You truly have to blow someone completely out of the water in order for you to get a true um, compliment on something that your company is doing right, because people are expecting your company to do a good job and provide a good job. That's the norm. It's when you go above and beyond of what's expected that you will begin to get kudos and people will begin to talk about that. But if you have an employee that is going below what is expected, people tend to talk. So you want to make sure that you are paying attention to that. And not only does it affect your customers, but potential employer and future employees or candidates. If they hear a company is not doing well, or they have rude employees, or they have a toxic work environment, you are running off top talent. They won't even apply to your roles if they see that happening. All right. Next, you could possibly see, your top performers leave. You could start seeing people uh, leave the organization because they do not want to be involved in a toxic work environment. So, what do you do when this is happening? What are your steps? All right. You know you need to act immediately, right? You got to work, move quickly. You got to figure out, is this a coaching moment, or do we need to go ahead and get this person out of here? You know, and the overall goal is just to make sure that You're minimizing the damage, and you're protecting your team. All right, so once you discover that there's an issue, whether you figure it is a coaching moment, you need to do training, or you need to terminate, one of the very first things you need to do is you need to document. You need to start documenting everything. So you want to create a clear, objective record of performance issues with specific examples and dates. Then you want to talk to the employee. You want to talk to the employee and see what type of support they need in order for them to be successful in the role. So, whether that is coaching, maybe mentorship, um, feedback, you just want to make sure that you are responding to any issues and make sure you do it in a timely manner. You do not want to let an bad behavior go on for weeks and for months and then try to address it. You want to get on top of that as soon as you notice it. So, what I suggest is within the first 90 days, you follow up with your individuals, with your new hire. The first week, you need to schedule, you know, 15 minutes, 30 minutes on the calendar just to touch base with them. Something else, I would actually uh, have a conversation with the team that the person is working with. Have a meeting with the team. The team will give you feedback. Let them tell you what they're seeing. What are they observing? How is their work experience going? A lot of times, upper leadership and management do not get the buy-in or feedback from the team until they start complaining. So be proactive and start asking your team, how are they working out? What are you seeing? How are you enjoying working with them? Or is there anything you see that we could work with them on that you feel that they need coaching with, they need additional assistance with? Go ahead and start asking those questions. Because the goal is to help an employee be successful in the role. So sometimes you can kind of fix things early on, but in the event that you can't, you want to make sure that you're talking and trying to support that new hire best you can. All right. If need be, go ahead and pull in HR. I always say it's easier just to go ahead and send HR a note and just say, hey, just a heads up, not for sure if this is turning into anything, but this is what we're seeing, this is what's going on. And then kind of lay out a plan for HR and let them be able to help you um, navigate your way through course correction if need be. And then in the event that you see that you need to go ahead and separate with the organization, work with HR and possibly legal to ensure that you are staying within compliance with employee laws and regulations before you go ahead and terminate. And then also remember, you should not terminate an employee without notifying HR first. You do not make any terminations without the approval of HR first. There's a reason why HR is in the building. They are very important to the organization and they can help prevent lawsuits, monetary loss, reputation damage, just all sorts of things. So you definitely want to consult with your HR department first. Also, I would say don't make a hire without consulting HR either. All right, now in the event that you realize that yeah, this is just not working out, we're gonna have to let this individual go. Once you've already talked to had an opportunity to talk to HR about this situation, you want to move swiftly. You want to be quick. Um, Go ahead and make the decision and go ahead and move forward with it. Secondly, when it comes to terminating an employee, a lot of people have a hard time doing this. It could be very uncomfortable for someone, especially if they've never had to terminate someone. You want to go ahead and create a plan. You want to be respectful. You want it to be dignified. And you want to protect the team and the morale of your team members when you have to cut someone loose. But also, you don't want it to be a traumatic experience for the person that's leaving. You know, the goal is not to embarrass them or cut into them or things like that. So I always tell everyone if you need to let someone go, and this really depends your on your organization, depending on the situation. Don't terminate someone on a Friday. If you're going to terminate somebody, do it on a Thursday. Do it on a Thursday. Uh, and preferably in the morning. Terminate them in the morning. Um, and once you've made that decision, go ahead and get them offboarded. Make sure you let them know, when they're going to receive their final check. Um, any remind them of any, you know, non-compete clauses, any proprietary agreements that they have signed, those types of things. You want to go ahead and do that. And then once the decision has been made and the termination has happened, you want to go ahead and notify your team. By doing these actions, this helps to reestablish trust with your team. It also strengthens your leadership accountability. So you want to keep those things in mind in the event that you have to let someone go. Now, what can we do to prevent from having an experience with a bad hire? We don't want to have bad hires. They're horrible. It's a horrible experience for all parties involved. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to make better hiring decisions. We're going to have really good hiring processes, and we're going to do better as we move forward, right? So one of the very first things you need to do is make sure you have a crystal clear job description. It is imperative for organizations to remember you have to update your job descriptions. And your job description should be realistic of what the employee is actually going to do. I cannot tell you how many times I've looked at a job description and the last time the job description was updated was basically 10 years ago. It is not current. Job tasks are no longer relevant, you know. So make sure you stay on top of your job descriptions and you are true and honest in that job description. All right. Make sure you are aligning company values. Make sure it is talking about what is expected in the role, what they will be doing, what the skill set is. You know, you want to be able to tell all of those information, provide all of that information in your job description. Now, once you have done that, now you want to think about um, the hiring process, right? So, if you have a job role where there is a certain skill that is required, you want to go ahead and assess the candidates to ensure that they have the skills needed to do the job. Also, you got to remember, depending on what your industry is, you want to hire someone where culturally they have worked in environments, either the same environment that you are currently hiring for or something that is similar. You do not want to take a person who has worked in a completely different industry, they have zero experience, and throw them into an environment that is so widely different from anything that they've done before. In the event that you do that, you need to give them a little bit more time to be able to adapt to your environment because it can be a culture shock going from a very different environment than what you've come from. But you want to make sure that you are crystal clear with your environment during your interview process and also on your job description. Next, you want to do a thorough reference check. Go beyond surface level verifications to gain insight into past performance, work styles, and cultural compatibility. That is really going to come from your questions that you're asking when you get ready to do your reference check. It really is. Um, I will also say, depending on um, who the person provides you as a reference check, you also want to check and see if you can verify that they were actually a manager at said company. I have had opportunities where I have worked with clients and I have had to conduct reference checks on behalf of the client. And what I have discovered is they will find a teammate who was just, a peer and have them listed as a manager. And I've gone to, let's say, LinkedIn and discovered that they were never a manager. So you have to watch those type of things. And also, in the event that you notice that, you see that, I would not move forward with that individual. Anytime you see someone who will not be truthful during the interview process, that is the biggest red flag of all. They're not going to be truthful once they get inside that organization. All right. When you conduct your interviews, it is imperative that organizations start including the team that is going to work with the individual. You are setting your team up as well as the individual. You're setting them up for success. They're able to see one another, they're able to vibe with one another, they're able to ask questions. Involve your team in the hiring process. Let them ask questions, let them talk to the individual as well. And I know that in some um, situations that is not always possible. You know, sometimes you can't pull everyone together um, and have them sit into a room. But if you have an opportunity to get everybody on a Zoom call, definitely do it. All right. And then also leverage modern hiring tools and analytics to reduce unconscious bias and making rush decisions under pressure. Unconscious bias is, let me tell you, it is so real, and people do it without even realizing they're doing it because it's so second nature for people to form opinions and whatnot, and it's horrible. So make sure you're using tools to ensure that you're not uh, unconsciously doing that. All right, now you've done that. You've learned from your mistakes. You're gonna move. You're gonna set up practices to ensure that your next hire is going to be a great hire. Next thing you do is remember that you're not the first person to make a bad hire. You won't be the last. Everybody goes through things. You've had a small setback, but you're back in charge now. Uh, it's really a learning opportunity for the manager as well as the organization. You know, just remember you want to recognize the true cost of making a bad hire, and then you're going to prevent doing it going forward. Um, because you know the impact that it has on the team. So make sure that as soon as you see it, um, you go ahead and you take the necessary steps to correct it or change it. Right. Um, After you've done that, you get a new person in. Um, you've already learned, so now you're moving forward. The team is able to move forward. Um, you have pulled together um, I guess the processes of how you're going to hire going forward. You know what tools you're going to use. You'll have your questions. You'll have everything going for you um, in the event that you need to do hiring in the future, right? So you're going to learn from your mistakes. You're going to do things differently and better to ensure that you are moving forward and moving in a positive direction. All right. And then all you have to do is focus on hiring and retaining the best possible talent in order to take your company um, forward. You know, you don't want to be in the practice of hiring um, for the same position over and over and over again. If you notice that you are constantly having to backfill a position, there's a problem there, and we need to go. You'll need to go ahead and figure out why you cannot keep a person in a particular role, because that means there's something broken there, you know. But the goal is to get someone hired, get them involved in the team, get them acclimated, and be able to move forward and produce longevity hires within your organization. If you have any questions, if you feel that you need support, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My name is Leslie Ann Anderson, and my email address is here on the screen. Send me an email, and I will be more than glad to help you as you navigate your way through your hiring practices, um, any type of support you or your organization may need. All right, well, that concludes our training for today. I hope you have a fantastic day.